Boker Tov Lapid Nation. I guess it's part of the program to redo the Aliyah for all of us this week. Can y'all hear me? Is everything coming through? No? Still not coming through? All right, I guess we are live. Are we live? Okay, there we go. I get a taste of what everybody else is going through with regards to YouTube. So I guess it's not necessarily PC or Mac because, you know, I have a Mac. Yep, I feel your pain, Rabbi. Yeah, so, well, Boker Tov, Lepi Nation, welcome to the Aliyah Day. Today we are going to be talking about, this is the second time I'm going through this spiel, but the Parochet, restoring the veil. So we'll look a little bit into why the veil was torn. We'll look at the significance of the Parochet in the Mishkan, and how do we restore, or can we restore, this torn veil today. So before we get into that, I had an interesting story that I came across, and I'm sure Rabbi will appreciate this. So it's talking about Napoleon, and during his wars, he actually didn't do so well in fighting the Russians. And so when he was headed back to France, he ended up stopping, really hiding out in a basement, and he thought he was by himself, but it turns out there was a man there, and he was actually it was a Jewish man doing his Mincha prayers. And so, he realized he was a Jew, and so he approached him for help and asked him for assistance to find his way back, basically, to France. And so this Jewish guy assisted him, gave him some food, I believe, took him home, and then went along with him for a while, till he was able to get on the path back to France. And so Napoleon said, "I don't have anything to give you, for what you've done for me, except the coat on my back." And this was the famous royal coat of Napoleon. And so he actually gave him his coat, and so this man, he was headed back home when he actually came upon some robbers. And so the robbers wanted to take the coat from him. So, but knowing the importance of this coat, so this Jewish man said, "Look, the only thing important on this coat is the gold buttons and some of the embroidery. You can have the gold buttons, just let me keep the coat." So the robbers basically agreed and took the buttons. And so this man was able to keep the coat of Napoleon. And apparently, again, I'm not sure if it's a true story or not, but I saw that they actually eventually made that into a parochet for a synagogue, and it actually supposedly is in a synagogue in Israel right now. So that'd be amazing if the actual coat of Napoleon is on a parochet in Israel. So maybe a rabbi can go check it out next time they go to Israel. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So let's start with welcoming everybody. I apologize for the delay, and looks like, I don't know if it's just YouTube or what the deal is, but I think we've tried different machines, different operating systems, and everybody seems to be having a problem starting off the live stream. So I don't know. Well, welcome. I guess this is the second time around, so I'm not sure if I'll be missing out on some people. Actually, you know what? Let's see. All right. Boker Tov. So I believe it was Milka that kicked us off at least that first time. So welcome, Boker Tov, Jubilee, Zakin Yegal, Boker Tov. It was great listening to all the Zakins and the Gabai this week. some great insights from the Aliyah. Boker Tov, Rabbi, Shalom. Boker Tov, Amita, Chris and Crystal, welcome. Good to see y'all. Shoshana Brenner, Ariella Rafaela, Boker Tov. Boker Tov, Sarah Merritt, hope you and Shane are doing great. Boker Tov, Amana. Rivka, Boker Tov. Chanel, Boker Tov. Let's see. Nelly Grace, good to see you. Daniel Fortune, Boker Tov. Shalom Peaches, good to see you here. Shalom Donna, Sergio. Let's see, Hepzibah, Boker Tov. Alida, Boker Tov. All right, who else is here? Brenda Jones, Shalom. Denise. And I think that is it. Anthony Collins, Boker Tov. Hope you and Edith are doing great. Samuel Dykes, Greg Kroon, welcome. Leah Smith, Jolene, welcome. Seth Holt, Boker Tov. All right, let's see. Johan from South Africa, Boker Tov. Beard of Prey, welcome. D Greenidge, welcome. Good to see you. Z-Ray, Boker Tov, Zakin. Kim Bement, welcome. Shalom. All right, I think I just said Jubilee. Yes, welcome. All right. Chana Cantu, welcome. John, Jeannie, Amana, Sylvia, welcome. Boker Tov. David White, Boker Tov. Hope you and Makia are doing great. All right, I believe that is it. That's everybody. If I missed your name, I apologize. All right, so again, Parashat Terumah, right? So this is all about the contributions for the tabernacle, and we've been listening to some great insights from the Gabbai and the Zakins this week. So the word Terumah literally means offering. You know, it's an uplifted, a raised portion. Just wanted to say, since we're talking about offerings, right? So I heard the story about a rabbi who had a campaign, or basically they needed to raise some funds for a building project. And so he said to his congregation, he was, telling them, okay, this is how much we need to raise. But there, I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is we already have the money. The bad news is it's in your pockets. So, so I feel like we've been talking about our fundraiser for the digital sign. So, hey, the good news is we have the money, right? So that's all I'm going to say about giving today. Let's dive into the Aliyah for this parasha. And it starts off with the Parochet. Right? So the Parochet, it's this veil, or it's this partition. It's made of the techelet, the argamon, the purple, and the scarlet or the red, the shani wool, and also linen. So this is where you see there are two instances. There's the parochet and some of the actual fabrics of the tabernacle, and the priestly garments both had this intertwining of what we would know as shatnas, which is the mixing of wool and linen, but it was permitted only in the temple and for the high priest. Just an interesting aside. So this word parochet, it has a root in this word called pircha, which means to break or breaking. So you see this word, it has to do with division. And before we go into this concept of the torn veil, Zakin Yigal actually mentioned Marcion yesterday about the heretic, right? And he was the one who had preached that the God of the Old Testament was a different God from the God of the New Testament. and he was the one to publish some of the earliest compilation of the New Testament, which was later modified before becoming canonized. And it was actually the church that even declared him a heretic, but they kept a lot of what he said. So that reminded me of this article that I came across recently. It's pretty crazy, and I just wanted to run through real quick a few of the excerpts from this article, just to give you an idea of what we're dealing with, right, when it comes to the theology of the torn veil. So this is it's an article talking about religious liberty, and it says, to understand why it took so long for the principle of religious liberty to be implemented in practice, let's turn to the ancient pre-Christian world. So prior to Christianity, all religions were emphatically political. Now we can see this as we can see an example of this in the following from the book of Exodus, and he goes on to quote the first three of the 10 commandments. So he goes on to say, we read in the Old Testament of God's special covenant with the Jews, who are repeatedly described as a, in quotes, chosen people. In fact, in the ancient world, all tribes or nations considered themselves chosen and protected by their gods, lowercase g, whether it was Apollo and the other Olympian gods in Greece, Marduk and Nabu for the Babylonians, Ra and Isis and Osiris for Egypt, or Jehovah among the Jews. All this clubbed together, the gods, the lowercase g gods of the ancient world, were always the gods of a particular people. That is what it means to say religion in the ancient world was political. It gets worse than that. So in this respect, the Hebrews were like other ancient peoples. The Hebrew God, here he goes on to kind of shift and kind of say the Hebrew God was singular, mysterious, omnipotent, and he was the God of the whole world. In this sense, Judaism prepared the way for Christianity, the first universal religion. So you see how they've already separated the God of the Old Testament as being just like the gods of the ancient world, and all really Judaism was preparing the way for Christianity, even though they forget that it was the same so-called God that gave Judaism all its laws and all of that. So, I mean, he goes on to say that to defeat another nation in war meant defeating its gods, and he quotes portions of Deuteronomy about how God's talking about destroying all the idols and stuff. Goes on to say, perhaps the most famous example of the laws being absolutely sacred and binding is the story of Moses descending from Mount Sinai, carrying God's commandments to his people. Every ancient people had divine commandments of this kind. Woo! So it's pretty crazy. I'm not going to read the whole thing, and then he goes on to justify Christianity and all of this nonsense. There was little investigation into matters of conscience prior to Christianity. So basically, prior to Christianity, it was the outward expression of piety, demonstrating loyalty to the community and its gods by, again, lowercase g, by obeying the divine law and participating in the public ceremonies and rituals that mattered in the ancient world. It is only with Christianity that belief becomes paramount. So apparently this guy has a BA and an MA and a PhD, but that doesn't stop him from all the BS that's in that article. So it's pretty crazy that this is the kind of mentality that you're dealing with, that they've completely, talking about separations, right? Partitions, division, they've divided or made a separation between things that I mean, so really what they've done is separated themselves from Judaism, but still hold on to the Old Testament as some sort of justification for why Yeshua did, well, in their case, Jesus did what he had to do to save the whole world. But they've made that separation. At the same time, there's this concept of blurring the lines between the things that God has told us to keep separate and divided, right? So exactly. That's right. BS from MSU. That's great, Rabbi. So I mean, so this is just, it's mind blowing, really, and this is the foundation of what's being taught in Bible college, and this is why we have such a big problem with having people kind of understand the true gospel and see what the Torah is really about. So that was just a quick precursor to understanding the problems with the torn veil. Now, Rabbi has actually recently even talked about this, about the torn veil, and I think he referenced this in one of his drashes. He's talked about this before in the past. So I'm really just going to expand just a little bit on that. But really, the problem with this torn veil, and people always talk about it removing this barrier to God, of opening up this access to God, really. So the problem, though, is that's not really the problem of, sorry guys, my okay, I think it's fine. All right, thought my battery was running out over here, but we're good. All right, so one of the problems is that the people who even teach this, they don't really care about the Mishkan, the Tabernacle, the Midrash, the temple. They don't care about the Holy of Holies, because guess what's in the Holy of Holies? The one thing that's in the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh Kedoshim, is the Torah, the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of the Covenant. As Rabbi has mentioned multiple times, there's only one covenant, and it's the tablets of this covenant that's in the Holy of Holies, right? So why do you even want access into this place when you don't really care about what's in the Holy of Holies? So that's one problem. Secondly, this is obviously, taught by Gentiles who say now, well, before we didn't have access, but now we do. But the problem with this assumption is that, if according to them, it's this inner veil, this parochet, that was torn, it still doesn't help them, because guess what? The wall that kept the Gentiles out of the temple courts, that wall is still intact. The Gospels don't say anything about that wall being broken down, right? So even if this torn veil refers to more access to God, it really only gives more access to God to the Levites, who have access to the holy place. So it's, again, I understand it's an analogy, but the problem is it doesn't work, right? It doesn't. The analogy that the way they want to use that analogy doesn't fit. So the third problem is, the third problem is we don't even know that the Gospels were referring to the Parochet. Does anybody know how many curtains were in the second temple? Anybody have a guess how many curtains there were? So, we this portion actually talks about two curtains. Now, one's the parochet and one's what's called the ha-masach. It's further down in this parasha, in this Aliyah, actually. So, yeah, unfortunately, 3 or 4. Johan said 2. So, yeah, we're to pray one curtain dividing the holy and the holy of holies. Well, so according to the Talmud, there were 13 curtains in the second temple. So 13 curtains. 7, oh, Hepzibah, good job. 13, okay. 7 were opposite or the inside of 7 gates. 1 was at the entrance to the sanctuary, 1 at the entrance to the entrance hall, and then there were 2 additional curtains within the partition. So the Talmud actually, and there is some debate, I guess, about this, but this portion in the Talmud, it's from Ketubot 106a, talks about the Parochet actually being 2 curtains. And in addition to that, there were actually 2 curtains corresponding to the partition, the Parochet, between the Holy and Holy of Holies. Above, there was an upper chamber in the second temple. There was an upper chamber above the Holy and the Holy of Holies. And there were 2 curtains up there as well. So in total, there were 13 curtains. And it's interesting because, obviously 13 is an amazing number. Pardon me while I try to. 13 is a great number in Judaism. So there are a lot of things. One thing you can think about is the 13 attributes of Hashem, the 13 attributes of mercy. So, the secular world thinks 13 is an unlucky number, but for us, it's actually, you can't say the best number because Judaism has amazing significance to almost, a lot of numbers, right? So, but it's a really great number. And 13 times 2 is the gematria for the 4-letter name of Hashem, 26. 13 is the gematria for Ahava, for love, for Echad, for one. Also, interestingly, in this week's Torah portion, we see the contributions to the temple. And guess what? There are 13 materials that were dedicated or brought forward for the temple, so the tabernacle materials. So there were 13 materials there. And, interestingly, I'm not going to read this whole thing because I'm running out of time, but in there also talks about, this is from the Art Scroll commentary to Ezekiel. It's a really cool portion talking about really the Mishkan and how, well, again, we don't have time for all that. So, but it just real quick, the 13 gifts which the Jews were called upon to donate to the Mishkan were actually a moral obligation upon them in view of the 13 favors they had received at the Exodus. Nevertheless, God views them as a voluntary donation and will reward them with 13 signs of protective love in Messianic times. And that's referencing Isaiah 4, 5, and 6. So a lot of cool significance about this. So going back to our topic here about the veil. So there were 13 curtains, and really the Gospels don't say which curtain. We don't have the exact Hebrew that they used. So we don't know which curtain it was. So it may not really be the curtain between the Holy and the Holy of Holies. It could be the curtain to the entrance to the temple. So, which is most likely, I personally believe that that's most likely the curtain that was torn. There's a talk, again, things from Antiquities of the Jews. Josephus talks about that screen on the outside, called a masacha, that was attached to stone lintels. And, there was an earthquake that happened at the time of the death of Yeshua. And so, it's understandable that with the earthquake, the stones were cracked or something, I think the Gospels say. And if it was attached to that, you can see how the outer curtain could be ripped in two, right? So, again, speculation, I don't know. But either way, we don't have a clear idea of which curtain or which veil was torn. So all that to say, it's still for us as Jews, what's the significance of this, right? And so this is what Rabbi has mentioned, and it's that it's symbolic of Hashem rending his outer garment as a mourner. And so that is, and also another level that we can take it to is that the mourning is not necessarily because Yeshua died, but rather I believe that the mourning could be because of Israel's sin. And at the moment of Yeshua's death, that was kind of, in a sense, sealing the decree for the exile. So which eventually led to the destruction of the temple. And really, again, the exile was not because of the rejection, so-called rejection of Messiah. The exile was because of their sin, the sin of the people, and because they did not listen to the about repenting and turning back to the kingdom of heaven. So we're going to look at the Midrash here real quick. But just to, again, quick aside, another thing that they talk about is, this barrier, right? Before we could not have access, but now we do. Again, that's completely false. The Talmud actually says in Zevachim 55b, just talking about curtains, right? And it's talking about the curtains of the tabernacle. It says a curtain itself is made only to be used like an open entrance, and therefore it is not considered as if the entrance is closed. And this discussion is particularly talking about the doors of the sanctuary and about how the sacrifices had to be done when the doors are open, but the curtain's still there. So that's, it's a separate discussion. But interestingly, even with a curtain, it's used like an open entrance. I thought that was pretty interesting. So let's go into the Midrash. So what is the problem, right? The problem really was the sin of Israel. And what happened is really, okay, let me just read this. So this is from Midrash Rabbi Echa. This is in the introduction. It says, talking about, this is about really the affliction of Tzara'at that they're talking about from Leviticus 13. And it goes on to say, and the one with Tzara'at, this is in a reference to the holy temple, which had in it a Tzara'at-like affliction. So it goes on to say, and they profaned my temple and contaminated it. So that's likening it to the Tzara'at affliction. His garments shall be rent. These are the priestly garments. The hair of his head shall be unshorn. This is an allusion to that which is stated, he uncovered the shelter of Judah. He uncovered that which was covered, meaning that the enemy removed the roof of the temple. And he shall cloak himself up to his lips, and this refers to the fact that since the people of Israel were exiled among the nations of the world, not one of them could utter a Torah thought from his mouth. He used to call out contaminated, contaminated. And this refers to the first and the second destruction. That's the first and the second destruction of the first and second temples. And in the footnotes, it goes on to say, Judah or Israel, really, they were sure that the shelter of Judah would protect them. Instead, God uncovered the shelter of Judah. He removed their protection. Now, interestingly, this word for shelter of Judah, and this is from Isaiah 22:8, that the Midrash is quoting. This word for shelter is masach. So again, if you look at the portion from this week, Exodus 26, verse 36, it says va'asita la masach. So you shall make a screen. So it's talking about this screen on the entrance of the tent. So interestingly, so it says he uncovered this shelter of Judah, the Masach. Again, just a slight aside. Do you this word Masach, it's a very fascinating thing, because who knows what the golden calf is called in Hebrew, which will be, in a couple of parsha weeks from today, really, a couple of parshas coming up will be the parsha about the golden calf, right? And we know what the golden calf is in Hebrew. The one thing that the golden calf is not called in Hebrew is a golden calf. So it is actually called the Egel Masecha. So Egel HaZahav would be golden calf, literally, but the Torah portion actually never calls it, at least in that instance, talking about the golden calf incident, never calls it Egel HaZahav, which would be golden calf, but he calls it the Egel HaMasacha, or Masecha. I didn't look this up, but I need to. Well, yeah, never mind. But I was going to look it up actually, but it actually says Egel HaMasecha, which interestingly is the same word. So it's like it's really the masked calf. And again, we don't have time to really dive into. Again, it's a discussion for that parasha, obviously, but this concept of the golden calf, where people were worshiping this golden calf as if it was Hashem, and there's a mystery there because it tying it to Moshiach ben Yosef, and because they used a golden plate, threw it into the fire, and the golden plate said, "Arise, O ox," talking about Joseph. And so you see this picture where the Messiah ben Yosef, in a sense, is worshipped like a golden calf, like an idol. But anyway, so all that to say, there's this really fascinating connection to this thing about the screen being torn, right? So, all right, sorry, I'm all over the place over here. All right, I wanted to. We'll kind of wrap it up. So, we're living in this time where people have this desire to, in a sense, storm the castle. They're like, it's my right to have access into the Holy of Holies, right? And they kind of want to force their way in. But the interesting thing is, why do we have the Parochet? Why do we have all these screens? Why is there so much detail into the minute intricacies of all of the tabernacle furnishings and the building and everything? There's so much detail. There's more detail talking about several different parashas. I believe like 5 different parashas just talking about the furnishings and the building of the Mishkan. So there's so much detail there, for something that we don't have the temple anymore. But Hashem definitely he wanted to tell us that there's a great significance to the Mishkan, to the spiritual aspect, which is why so much time and detail and text is, given to that. So we'll end with this reading from the Midrash about the 3 guardians. But before that, I feel like there's this sense in this generation, or it may not just be this generation or this time that we're living in, but people really want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to in a sense, put on a show for all the stalkers, the friends on social media, right? So they want to reveal everything about their personal lives and their innermost thoughts and feelings on display for everybody to see. But this is really, it's the opposite in Judaism, so the more valuable and treasured something is, the more private and protected we keep it. And this is also, why this concept of tznius, of modesty in Judaism is huge, because it's all about protection, really. It's at the heart of it, everything is about protection. And so, the more something is accessible or revealed or exposed, it becomes kind of cheap, right? And so in the Torah perspective, genuine intimacy is only achieved when something is private or exclusive, just like a marriage, right? So this is why the tabernacle, the most important part of the tabernacle, the Torah, the covenant, it's kind of like the ketubah, was the most protected, right, in the Holy of Holies. And really only one person once a year could go into that place and connect with Hashem in that deeper level, but it's really on behalf of the entire nation. And so it's there was a study that was done by the New York Times article, I'm not sure when, but this was a while ago, about how they did the study about social norms and stuff, about social media and stuff like that. And so it went on to say that apparently they discovered that if you reveal everything about yourself, you may be diminished in your capacity for intimacy. And it goes on to talk a little bit more, but all that to say, Hashem wants us to be intimate with him and get to know him more intimately through his Torah. But it's not a sudden revelation. It's not now everything is revealed. It takes time. It's progressive revelation. It's revelation through really years of going through the Torah portion on a yearly cycle. We're going through the same Torah portion every year, but as y'all know, every year we learn something new, something amazing that we've never heard before, even though we've read these Torah portions so many times, for those of you that have been on this journey for a while. And so it's not a overnight journey of intimacy with Hashem. You cannot storm the Holy of Holies and expect to draw close to God, right? So it's a process. And so especially for everybody that's on this process of conversion, I can understand that. Yeah, you want to get to the finish line, right? Like, how do I get to the end? Convert? How do I know everything? How do I get all the books and all the sources and basically just kind of binge watch or read or hear all of these insights? That's not how God works. He works like on one Musar trait at a time. He works on one insight. He wants you to meditate on one thing at a time. So, we love to listen to insights all day, but if you're not actually taking that insight and changing your life and making changes and improving and growing and elevating yourself, what's the point of all the insights, right? So it's a journey, really. And even for those of you that are converting, even that process is a journey, so that so that eventually you'll get there, as long as you just keep with it. Take the time to meditate on this week's Parochet, and it doesn't have to be what I want to learn another insight tomorrow. Like, meditate on the insights you've heard yesterday, right? So, and make changes in your life. And so really spend time and dwell and take time to, and really that's how you get more intimacy. And it's also, as we go through life, as we face challenges, we learn to trust in him. We learn to rely on him. And that is how we get to know him more, right? So David Wade, there's a new covenant. There's not really a new covenant. It's a renewed covenant. And if you go back to Jeremiah 31 and read that, you'll know that it's the exact same covenant that was renewed for the people of God So you may want to go read that. We're going to end with the Midrash. This is from Midrash Shemot Rabbah. And actually, if you go back and read Jeremiah 31, you'll know that, well, yeah, just go read that. So, Midrash Shemot Rabbah 34. This is one of the insights here. It's not actually from the Midrash, but it's an insight on the Midrash, talking about the three guardians. So basically, Shem Mishwell suggested, there are these three different aspects of the tabernacle's importance to Israel. The three guardians, he explains, represents three types of care. A watchman protects the vineyard from harm. A shepherd sustains his flock by leading it to fields of pasture. And a father nurtures his children with a personal connection, sweetened by warmth and love. In caring for the Jewish people, God serves in all of these roles. He protects them from both spiritual and physical threats, sustains them with food, clothing, and the gift of life, and above all, provides them with a higher goal toward which to strive, developing an attachment to his presence in this world and the next. Now, the tabernacle was instrumental in drawing down these heaven-sent benefits, and it was correspondingly divided into three distinct areas: the courtyard, the holy, and the holy of holies. The courtyard, where the offerings were sacrificed on the altar, drew down the blessing of protection, for we are taught that the sacrificial offerings protect Israel from its enemies. The holy contained the shulchan and the menorah, which channeled prosperity, that's the shulchan, and light, the menorah, to the world. Hence, this area drew down the blessing of sustenance. And the holy of holies, that innermost sanctum in which the keruv, the cherubim, atop the ark stood facing each other, drew down the greatest blessing of all, the opportunity for an intimate father-son relationship with God. Thus, when God gave the command to build the tabernacle, he was essentially saying to Israel, you are a vineyard in need of protection, so prepare a courtyard for my sake, and I will be your watchman. You are also a flock in need of sustenance, so build the holy, and I will thereby sustain you. And you are a son in need of a father, so erect the holy of holies, and I will draw you close to me. What an amazing insight. That also reminded me of Yeshua's parable about the vineyard. And it's another parable that is used to kind of blame the Jews. It's about, it's where the caretakers of the vineyard basically abuse all the servants, and then eventually abuse and kill the son because they thought they can take the vineyard for themselves. But it has nothing to do with, it's not a rebuke to Israel as a whole, because guess what? Israel is the vineyard of God. It's a rebuke to the leaders because they were the ones who were responsible for following the Torah and for teaching the Torah, but they sold out the Torah in a sense, right? And so it's a rebuke to the leaders. And so, as Lapid Jews, what is the takeaway for us? For us, how do we restore this torn veil? That I wanted to share. Well, so real quick. Sorry, I know we started a little late, but this is the last insight from Rav Asher Wise talking about this. One of the rabbis, the Klausenberger Rav, said that his great-grandfather, the Divrei Chaim of Sons, had his Hasidim assembled around him, and he revealed to them that he could see the Beit HaMikdash standing in heaven. It had already been completed and was ready to descend. And all that was still lacking was the Parochet. At this point, an elderly chassid whose heart pined over the length of this galut, the exile. He cried out, why does the Rebbe not make a Parochet himself through his Torah and mitzvot? The Divrei Chaim's face flushed and he said, have I not already made one? Time and time again, I have woven Parochot for the Beit HaMikdash. But each time a wicked person transgresses a terrible sin and tears my Parochot apart. So how is the Beit HaMikdash in heaven built? How can we take this part? How can we take part in this vital endeavor to hasten its construction and bring the world to its ultimate perfection? It's by our mitzvot. It's by observing Torah. It's by bringing understanding and clarity to Torah and to the words of Moshiach through the Torah. And that is how we can speed up, if you will, the final building of the third temple. And really, this is how we can get the temple back in Israel, in really for the world. And that is by our Torah, our good deeds, our Gemilut Chasadim, our Avoda, our service. Those are the three pillars: Torah, Avoda, and Gemilut Chasadim, right? So that's how we finish the work of building the temple in heaven. And that's how we can bring the temple down. So end of our Aliyah. Yes, that was the second close. Thank you so much for being with me this morning. It's such a privilege, such a joy to share the Torah with you, and it's such an honor. And I'm definitely grateful for Rabbi for this honor to be able to share with y'all. Rabbi will be back tomorrow. Woo, yeah. And so, it's going to be great. Tomorrow, we're going to close out the week. He's going to close out the week, and it's going to be a great Shabbat. So, like this video if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel, and share this video, share all our videos, our channel with your friends and your family, and help us get this message of Lapid Judaism. This is the true gospel of Moshiach, right? So we have to set the record straight, undo the bad theology, and share the true gospel and take it to the ends of the world. Also, again, if you've been blessed by this ministry, support us with your donations and your prayers. We can't do this without you. Thank you so much for being here. I apologize for the delay in the beginning. Have a great day. Shalom Aleichem.